If you think about trying to declutter your mind, it's a little bit like decluttering your home. It's change. And if you're going to make change, it's important to be clear why you're doing it. What are the benefits to you doing this? What might be the disadvantages of doing nothing?
Welcome to the HSE Talking Health and Wellbeing podcast. My name is Noreen Turley, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Peadar Maxwell. Peadar is a chartered psychologist and senior psychologist in primary care in Wexford, and he works with the HSE. Peadar brings with him a wealth of experience in helping individuals to navigate life's challenges. And today he'll be sharing insights on how to declutter your mind, from managing stress to enhancing focus. This episode is filled with practical strategies to support your mental well-being. So let's get started. Peadar, you're very welcome.
Good morning, Noreen. How are you?
Not too bad. I've been really looking forward to this podcast and to this recording because I have to say I have a lot of mind clutter. So first of all, I want you to explain to us, what is mind clutter?
Well, I'm delighted to be here, Noreen, and you're in the majority. We all have mind clutter. So mind clutter is a way to describe excessive or even overwhelming thoughts, worries, intrusive thoughts, concerns that preoccupy us. And if you like, stop us from using all of the mental skills that we want to use, like our memory, calming ourselves, having focus, attending to our work or to our loved ones. So it's the way to describe mind fog, if you like, that just makes our brain and our mind feel really busy and not as available to us.
Yeah. And mind fog, I can completely relate to as well. I'm a lady of a certain age, so mind fog could be very prevalent with me. But how come some people have mind clutter and then maybe others just don't?
Yeah. So I would say the individuals that don't, they probably just have less of it, right? There's different contributors to mind clutter. So one could be maybe somebody's individuality. So let's say, for example, if somebody was a neurodivergent, and they maybe were an autistic person or someone with ADHD or dyspraxia, they might find, for example, decision-making difficult. Lots of autistic individuals will say they find decision-making, not all, but many will find decision-making difficult. Others will say that, for example, working memory, like if you have an attention deficit, or people who have other kinds of motor skill challenges, they might find planning and organizing difficult. So that might lead to mind clutter. But then there's other factors that are really individual, such as our upbringing. Maybe I was raised to be a high achiever or to say yes and to be very agreeable, so I might have a tendency of taking too much on. It could be situational. It could be something like the new year. It could be something like planning for a big life event, a pregnancy, somebody joining the family, and planning a wedding. It could be something really, really positive, like planning a lovely family holiday. And mind clutter can become part of what's going on because maybe it's our own or other people's expectations of us. So it can kind of creep up on us when we're not aware that it's creeping up. But then we reach a point where we go, I can't think straight. I can't make decisions.
Yeah.
I feel like my mind is really busy.
So how do we know when we have it? What are the symptoms or what are the signs that we should be looking out for?
The signs are things like not making decisions. So somebody would describe clutter as unmade decisions, incomplete decisions, all kinds of clutter, whether it's mind clutter or other types of clutter. Another thing would be rumination. So rumination is thinking about something over and over again without coming to a solution. So we think about problems. We think about things that have happened in the past. We think about things that are going to happen, whether they're challenging, whether they're positive or negative. And that's okay because we need to kind of practice our script. We need to kind of go over and say, well, what did I learn from that little bit of conflict or that positive challenge in the workplace? And that's solution focused because we're learning, we're gaining from our experience. But if we're ruminating, we tend to think about it over and over again without really coming to any kind of conclusion. People who experience mind clutter might also find that they find it harder to become restful when they want to sleep. They might find that they don't want to dream because work is invading their dreams. They might find themselves getting irritable, particularly with people they're quite close to. So sometimes we have a lot of mind clutter in work, and then we go home and our loved ones get it in the neck because that's where we're safest and it's all kind of added up. Sometimes we have mind clutter at home and then we bring that into the workplace. And that looks like a little bit of disorganization maybe. It looks like maybe not making decisions. It could look like, rather than making a decision, you know what, I have enough on my plate right now. I'm really interested in that project. I might take it on. And instead of doing that, you say yes, because you can't make that decision. And you end up just with too much happening. Those kinds of things that look like an invasion of our memory, our organization skills, agitation, disruption of sleep, and kind of constant thinking about stuff.
Yeah, so procrastinating.
Procrastinating could be, yeah.
Yeah.
So procrastinating, again, an unmade decision, which leads to mind clutter. So some of us have a habit of procrastination, could be a positive thing. It might give you a chance to stop and to think about, is this for me? Do I want to enter this relationship? Is this the right car to buy? Should I say yes to this move in work? Whatever it is that you have going on. But if we've gone beyond the stage where we need to make a decision and we're just allowing these thoughts to gather up, and it could be little decisions, because sometimes we're under pressure to make the big decisions. What school will my child go to? Will I take this promotion? Whatever it is. But it's all of the little decisions. Like, what do I do with this pile of paperwork? Look at all these unread emails. Do I drive or do I take the bus this morning? Do I say this to my child's friend's mother? Do I solve this little problem or this little thing that's niggling at me? Or do I delay things? So that kind of leads up again to more mind clutter. And maybe because of unmade decisions, we're taking more and more responsibility ourselves for things that maybe we needed to hand over to somebody else.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's all the small things. You never really think about that. You think it's the big decisions. So, Peadar, what are some of the simple and practical steps that our listeners could start with today to try and declutter their minds?
Well, you know what? There's loads of great strategies to deal with mind clutter. And we can talk about those. But the first thing really to do is to visualize it. So sometimes we think of a cluttered mind, and we might not have used that term. Too many thoughts. I've got too much going on in my head. My head is full. I can't listen to any one more thing right now. And we might think of it in that way. But if we think of it as something physical, almost like we would think of clutter in the home or clutter in our pockets. Our pockets might be full of old receipts and sweet papers and all kinds of things. Our home might be full of endless numbers of runners or 17 spatulas or whatever we have in the home. Think of it kind of like that. Because if we visualize it as stuff that is going on in our mind, we can then deal with it. So the first thing that I would say, and the easiest thing to do, is just to say it out loud. My mind is full. I'm struggling making decisions. I can't take one more instruction. I can't always be there for everybody because my mind is just so cloudy right now. To say that out loud. Now, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can literally just say it to yourself and then listen back to yourself. It's lovely to get a little bit of feedback from it. So if you said it and then you say it to a trusted other, your adult sibling, your colleague that you trust, or maybe if you work in an area where there's supervision. Some of us work in areas where we have really clear supervision and we take these kinds of concerns. Some of us don't. And if you don't, maybe go to your line manager or a colleague you really trust and say, can I just tell you about what's going on for me in work? And tell them about the clutter you're experiencing.
Would there be fear connected to that? Is it showing that you're not able to cope and that you're too stressed out? And to go to your manager, I mean, that's kind of brave, isn't it, in some ways?
Listen, it is brave and we're only human, right?
Yeah.
So many of us will be in careers where that's the norm.
Yeah.
You know, I would say in psychology, that would be the norm,
Yeah.
right? But I don't want to use that example. I want to think of maybe where someone is saying, oh, like you said, will that make it look like I'm not really coping? So you might find a private way to do it. You might, if there's confidence in your work, you might, leave that confidentiality there and then talk about it in a more anonymous way with, for example, a best friend.
Yeah.
For example, you might tell your mobile phone, send yourself a voicemail, use the recording device in your phone, say it out, but listen back to it and see what that sounds like to you. Or even leave it for a couple of hours and listen to it maybe in the evening. How does that sound to me? If you have services available, like for example, if your employer has an EAP program, an employee assistance, if you, for example, have access to a counselling service, you might actually take another step, particularly if it's interfering with, how you're doing in life, for example, how you're relating to your loved ones, how you're coping in the workplace. You might take that extra step and talk to somebody. But if it's something that you've noticed that's niggling at you, and you don't have huge problem, it's just a general kind of mind fogginess, say it into your mobile, write it down. I mean, people talk about journaling and they sometimes think that it's this very special skill. I've got to journal every day. I've got to write in this really creative way. Nothing of the sort. It could be taking out a piece of paper and writing down some thoughts from the day, things that have really kind of gotten in the way, bothered you today. So maybe home things that have crept into work life or vice versa, and just write them down, tear it up, throw it in the fire, put it in the compost and say, I'm putting this away. This is not coming to bed with me. This is not coming on my walk with my kids or out for a meal that I'm going to, or these things can't come into work. So there's things that we can do maybe that are more private. And experiment, because sometimes when we make a change, we feel brave that we made a change. We've learned something new and we're saying to ourselves, I can actually do this on a very, very small scale. So it's a little bit like physical cluttering. It doesn't have to be where you don't go to work for a week and you empty every press in the house and you throw out 90% of your stuff. That's probably only available to those of us who have a staff at home, right?
Although that would be a good idea.
That would be a lovely idea. That would be a lovely idea. But maybe just taking one area of our life, a theme. So a theme could be clothing. A theme could be kitchen utensils. I was talking to a friend the other day and he's dealing with an insurance issue at the moment. And he was saying, I missed a really important email and they said I didn't get back in time. And he was just telling a group of us at something. And he said, like, the problem is that on the email app on his phone, he had 420 emails. And we were all looking, who has 420 emails in their private email? And one of my friends was a little bit braver and said, but what are they? Like, what's in there? Show us. And I mean, it was everyone he'd ever bought anything from, all of these retailers. And they were sending, like discount codes that he's never going to use. And I did say to him later, like a good decluttering would be a cyber decluttering of your email. Just get rid of them all. So you notice the emails that are important. Unsubscribe. So we can take little steps that can make us feel braver and show us that we can take the next step.
Yeah. And those little steps would make us feel good.
They would.
When you talk about journaling and people talk about brain dump.
Yeah.
So, like you said, people think journaling is something, you have to write very like a literary writer. Mm-hmm. It's literally just opening a page or a Post-it or anything and just writing your thoughts down.
If you've heard something that's really, really helpful, somebody has mentioned an organizational skill or a little bit of advice, put it on a Post-it and put it somewhere. Now, don't do that every day so that you've got, 57 Post-its around your monitor and that's all cluttered. But if it's something really, really important, but it would be ideal if you had a little copybook or something and you every now and again, when you felt under pressure, I've got too much going on, take it out and write it down. Write bullet points, write sentences, use curse words if you want, write anything you want and just put it in there and keep that in a private place. Take it out when you want. Have a little look at it later on and say, is that list really that important? Why did I not say no to this? Why am I still worried about this conflict I had with a neighbor, 5 years ago? Like she's forgotten about it maybe, or maybe it's whether she has or not, it's not that important. Yeah. Because there is a part of mind clutter that's called emotional clutter. And it is a way to describe how we hold on to feelings. And so we can hold on to feelings. Maybe bad things have happened to us. Maybe, unfortunately, we've been struck by tragedy or we've had a conflict with somebody. And we can hold on to all of the conversations and the accusations and the, I wish I was more confident to say this back then. But if we want to emotionally declutter, we really have to have compassion for ourselves. And we have to say, I'm ready to let go of this right now. And you might talk to somebody about it. It might be just, your partner or best friend or something. I was actually just thinking about that thing that happened. I'm going to let go of that right now. It might be where you seek help outside of your own resource network and you're let going of those kind of strong feelings because they can prevent you from having more worthwhile friendships, from meeting new people, for being present for family members, being present at events. Because when we have mind fog, we're not as present. Somebody is describing something really nice. And then our thoughts are heading off into the emails and the car that needs fixing and the garden that looks, terrible right now. We go off into all of our responsibilities. You mentioned brain dump there. And that's a great strategy. It's a really simple strategy. It's kind of like journaling, but just in the moment. So it might be just literally dumping all of those excessive thoughts onto a piece of paper, whether it's in a journal or it's a piece of paper that you're going to tear up, and you have a look at it and you think, how do I prioritize these things where decisions need to be made? Because there are some things that we can't just get rid of. I would often talk to parents and their children have been accepted into 2 schools and they're approaching sort of halfway through 6th class. And they're trying to make a decision, and it's invading every conversation that they have with a friend and a colleague and a friend member, rather just sitting down as a family, making that decision, informing the other school, your child won't be going there, and giving that place to somebody else. But it's getting something out of your mind, and it's giving you that peace of mind. We made a decision, and now we can look forward to this school.
Yeah, I do find that once you make a decision and you let it go, it's so freeing. It's like, phew, that's done now.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you move on to the next thing. And I do try and say that to my children as well. Just make the decision and let it go.
Yeah.
If it's in your scope of what you can make the decision on, and then let it go. But again, that's only with years of learning and going through that, of trying to make decisions. What about mindfulness or meditation? There's such a hot thing at the minute. Everybody's always talking about mindfulness, but it's kind of scary because I don't know enough about it.
And it's a funny kind of thing because I have met people over my career who have sat down to do a nice breathing exercise that they've seen somewhere, or they go along to a mindfulness event or whatever it is, and they're actually more stressed. And that's a really normal, because these things are skills.
Yeah.
So decision making is a skill. How do you sit down and you look at something and cadé an scéal, as I would always say to the kids, like, what's the story here about this friendship or this conflict in the class, or what's going on between yourself and your parent? And then let's tease out, what are the possible solutions? Do they make sense? Some of the solutions can be, unusual, I'm going to whack my friend when I go in. And which ones are going to make sense? Try them and then feel that sense of success and then praise yourself for it. So mindfulness is a little bit like that. It's a skill that we need to practice. Some people have this idea that mindfulness can be about changing your personality or being a different person or being a better person, or it's mystical in some way. It absolutely isn't unless you want it to be. So they're probably going more towards meditation.
Yes.
Meditation can be very often about being still, going deeply into your mind, getting in contact with your unconscious and looking at how your conscious feeds that. So in other words, if I have mind fog and I have too many things going on, my subconscious will be very stressed as well. It'll be kind of all there under the surface. So that's meditation, and we can look up great meditation practitioners in the community that might be out there and might teach us a good way to do that, a kind of a worthwhile way to do it, so we understand what we're doing. A little bit like yoga or weightlifting or running or anything. Mindfulness is probably more practical because you don't have to be still. Mindfulness can involve action, and you can have many meditations throughout the day. You can have many mindfulness experiences throughout the day. So one that I like to tell people about is mindful eating. So that's really just, you're sitting down and you're going to cook dinner anyway, or you've treated yourself to a takeaway, or you're out eating. It's just really slowing down the process. So it's kind of that Mediterranean approach to eating. This is going to take a little bit more time. We don't have to gobble this up and get on with the next thing. So it's about, where did this food come from? Talking to the person who cooked the food and thanking them for the preparation that they did. Looking at tastes and the sensations. Is this warm? Is it cold? Is it spicy? Is it sweet? Just slowing down eating the food. A really lovely thing to do, especially with if you have children, is to put a little bit of food in your mouth. Like it could be a Cheerio, it could be a raisin. If it's a little bit different to what you're used to, then that's even better because it kind of heightens the senses. So you just could put it in your mouth maybe. Or even before you do that, have a look at it. What shape is it? How does it feel? Is it heavy? Then put it in your mouth. How long can I keep it on my tongue? So if it's a chocolate button, that won't be very long. If it's, a frozen pea, that might be a little bit longer. How does it feel in my mouth? So the idea is to slow down. There was actually research done in UCLA in California where they taught people mindful eating. Not only did people eat more slowly, but they became more in tune with their appetite and fullness. So even just slowing down a simple thing can be helpful.
So when you say it's not mystical, so really it's about just being present, looking at things, actually, instead of sitting down, just eating your food because, it tastes really nice, but actually thinking about it.
Thinking about it.
So say, for example, if I was going for a walk, just being present, just being there,
being
look
present.
around you, listen, feel, touch.
Yeah. So mindfulness is about being present and non-judgmental.
Yeah.
So I'm here, I'm on this walk, and I'm not judging. I'm not giving out about the weather. I'm not saying I wore the wrong clothes. I'm looking around at the shapes, the smells, the leaves. They might be changing colour. There might be more leaves, and you might notice the contour of the branches. You might notice what the ground is like. Is it sandy? Is it squishy because it's muddy? Is it really dry today? Are there stones there that I've noticed? If I see a wildlife from our offices, our schools, our homes, from wherever we are, we can do a really quick mindfulness of looking or seeing. And all you really need is a window. If you don't have a window, you could use a poster or something. But it's looking out that window and just allowing yourself to breathe. You don't have to breathe specially in any kind of special way, but you're looking out and you see some kind of a view. It could be a golf club. It could be the wall of a factory. It could be literally anything. And you don't label the things. You don't go, that's a brick wall, that's a bird, that's a cloud. But you might be thinking, that's kind of soft, that's white, and that's fluffy. That has a sharp edge. Here's this color. This is what I've noticed. This is quiet. Maybe it's not so quiet. I hear an ambulance. I hear a car. I hear children playing in a play field in the distance. Just kind of noticing and doing that for as little as 2 minutes.
That's what I was going to say to you, because I was thinking, oh my God, well, I have to walk around looking at everything now. And then I get stressed about not looking at it and not feeling it and everything. So you literally just do it. And would you time yourself? Would you give yourself a time for it?
I personally wouldn't do that.
Okay.
And maybe there's some practitioner out there who would time it, but I personally wouldn't. I think when people put too many boundaries around either meditation or exercise or mindfulness, then they're hemming themselves in because that particular day, you might not be feeling it. Or you might get interrupted. Yeah. Oh, I got interrupted. Somebody knocked the door. I only did, 90 seconds of mindfulness and it says do 120 seconds. No, there's no perfect way to do it. And when we're doing it, our mind will wander. It'll kind of notice something like, gosh, they're building houses over there, or that's a beautiful horse over there. And these are all okay. You're noticing your environment, but you're taking yourself out of your mind, out of, gosh, that's a funny expression. You're taking yourself out of that inner space and you're looking at yourself in the environment and you're taking yourself away from incessant overthinking. And that's the most important thing.
It's just slowing down and trying to be peaceful and appreciating what's around you.
Yeah, trying to be peaceful.
Yeah.
And we can find that in a nook in our own home. I mean, sometimes people can feel a little bit guilty about finding a moment, either in work or at home. I'm supposed to be working right now. I have all these unread emails, but I'm going to stop. I'm going to put my hand on my chest and my belly, and I'm just going to breathe, even if it's for 30 seconds, and just notice which hand moves the most. Well, the one on my belly, hopefully, I'll notice it moving a little bit more, breathing a little bit more deeply, which is really good, which slows down the breath. It could be creeping off and sitting down and having a couple of minutes to read or whatever it is that you like to do. A really interesting way to think of mindfulness is just about being present where you are. And even though we can have fun on devices and, technology is great. A lot of us like it. Most of us are preoccupied with it to some extent. And some of us are angry about it. But it's about kind of making peace as well with something like technology, because that can really play on your mind and lead to more mind fog where, am I spending too much time online? Are my children playing too much? And it's about saying, well, how do we use technology to have fun and to be together? So it might be watching a game that your child is playing. You might not like it. It might not interest you, but you're there kind of going, and what are you doing now? Or just sitting really quietly. They might not want you to talk. It might be finding things that are on YouTube, like a cook or a meditation or something you've got an interest in, learning a language. I've recently just picked up the habit of listening to bite-sized Irish every day. It's like literally 3.5 minutes of Gaeilge each day. And you might learn how to talk about the snow or the fact that it's Tuesday or whatever it is. So we can find really ways to engage with technology. But at the same time, we might be minding ourselves that we're not using it as a distraction. to getting out there and getting some exercise or talking to our friends and family, and that we might be mindful of our screen time, because the distraction can lead to us not making decisions. Okay, I've made a decision that I'm going to walk a bit more. But if I watch too many episodes of the same series in one night, it's too late to go out for a walk right now, or something like that. So just being very mindful, if you like, of technology.
So talking about technology, and it's the other external and emotional influences that come from outside.
Yeah.
How do we handle that? How do we prepare for that? Or how do we stop that cluttering our minds?
Yeah. So we really need to be kind to ourselves. So when it comes to technology, for example, we have a lot of power and we need to use that power. We need to be in charge of our devices. There's other things that we have a little less control of. So that might be the demands of the workplace. It might be something even positive like change happening in the workplace. That can be really challenging, and it can fill your mind up with, why do you want to change again? Or I've learned how to do it this way, or I don't want to have a new boss, or whatever it is. It might be change happening in the family. A child has just transitioned off to maybe living independently, and you're worried about them because you're used to doing so much with them and for them. So let's look at the things that we can control. And I think that's the first thing. If you want to reduce mind clutter and brain fog, you're going to look at all of these situations, whether it's somebody imposing upon you or something that is happening that's positive or developmental, and say, what can I control here? Well, I can't make my young adult child go back in years. He's heading off to college or work or whatever it is. That's happening, and that's a good thing, right? But maybe there is a sensible, reasonable level of keeping in contact. Maybe I just need to remind myself, I think I did a pretty decent job raising this young person. They'll be able to mind themselves, and anything that goes a little awry, they'll learn from that. If it's something that's going on, say, relational, I think it's really, really important to look at the relationships that we have and think, am I benefiting from this relationship? Is this a positive thing? Now, even in the best of friendships and extended family, you can go through a bad patch with someone. I'm not saying you disown your in-laws or anything like that, or you drop.
Well, unless you want to, obviously.
Unless you want to. It could possibly be a good idea. But what I am saying is looking at if there are, you could say, toxic relationships. Relationships that are actually making too many demands of you, that are overly critical, that are very, very blaming. And is it healthier to just cut the tie there and to say, I'm going to concentrate on the people who help me, who bring something to my life, who are good to me and or my family, people whose company I enjoy, and I enjoy helping and supporting them as well. It's in any situation looking at what we can control.
Yeah. Peadar, just when you talk about relationships, I suppose I'm just thinking about different stages of your life and different ages. So as I get a little bit older, it's easier to make those decisions. Yes. I look at my own children now in their 20s. They want to be friends with everybody, and especially teenagers want to be the best friends with everybody. So it's difficult as a parent to try and teach kids that, because it's like they have to go through the process themselves. So you can say as many times, well, you can learn from my mistakes, but you know what? Sometimes they have to learn in their relationships from their own mistakes, and it's hard to watch it.
Yeah, we should try to have a varied social life, and it's healthier when they come from different backgrounds and we have different conversations with different friends. But overextending yourself can lead to mind clutter, and especially for young people, because they need to be on good terms with all of these.
Yeah.
And all of these other individuals may not be on good terms with one another. So especially for those primary and secondary school age children. And that desire to be around loads and have lots of friends is developmentally appropriate. So when we're really little, we're more into pleasing people. When we move into adolescence and early adulthood, our peers are really important. These are the people we're going to spend the rest of our lives with. But if it's leading us to a stage where it's really filling our minds with, I have to be out all the time. I remember speaking to a young chap there actually not that long ago, and he has this friend group, which is from, let's say, he grew up with, and this other friend group who are his college friends. And then the housemates were a separate friend group. And the housemates were just really into going out all of the time. So if he went out once with his friends and went out 3 times with them, he was hardly ever in. He was exhausted. He knew he was overdoing it. He was neglecting schoolwork, and he was broke. So guilt creeps in.
Yeah.
And that becomes a kind of a mind fog. how do I explain this to my parents that I need more money or that I'm always broke? How do I explain to myself that I'm not achieving? I'm not being that person I want to be at college. I've kind of given up sport for another night out or whatever it is that's going on. So I guess it's teaching our children that it is okay to not be best friends. And it is okay to not be friends with everybody. And as they get older, the parties get smaller and you don't have to invite the whole class. And it's good, of course, to be kind to people and to reciprocate. But at the same time, we don't have to invite the whole class to our parties as we progress through. And while it's nice to know lots of people, they don't have to be big parts of our life. Yeah. So it's that balance of understanding where they're coming from, but also understanding that you don't want them to become young adults or like ourselves with all of this kind of mind clutter and holding too many friendships and relationships and responsibilities at mind, and teaching them it is okay to, if you like, weed out friends from people we know versus the so-called online friends.
It's never too early to be talking to them about it, really, to try and help them through it. One of the things when you mentioned guilt about spending that little bit of time, and this sounds quite ridiculous, but I'm a mother of 4 and they were all very close in age. And I do remember times when I would even go for a walk and I'd nearly feel guilty about it. Like so ridiculous, ridiculous. I look back now and I see that. It's funny how your mind plays with you in relation to things like that because I so badly needed that self-care, but really I didn't know how to do it.
And that kind of guilt is almost universal.
So it's not just me then.
No, it's not just you. And there are some people out there who have like a load of things going on that like self-care things, and the penny has dropped and they're okay with it. But I think that particularly when our children are younger, or if we're in a new relationship, that can be another thing that, we feel like we have to be always present.
Yeah.
But being always present isn't really healthy because a little bit of separation is good for them. And self-care is good for us. And we want to be resource parents for our children. We want to be resource partners for our new partners. And we want to be resourced employees in our workplace. So knowing when to go home is really important in the workplace. Knowing that I can't stop talking to the lads just because I've got a new girlfriend, or the other way around, or whatever's going on. That's really, really important. So balance is important. So balance actually could be a really good antidote to mind clutter, because you've got that balance in your life rather than overthinking any one situation.
Yeah. And when you mention balance, we do have a new balance and stress program coming out later on in the year that hopefully will help people with all of this. So how do you even start creating the habits? Where do we start? Just for our listeners, I know you said the mindfulness, the meditation, then obviously if you want to go deeper, but on a daily basis, what kind of tips would you have for people who are juggling multiple roles like work and family and personal goals and all that kind of stuff, to help us declutter that mind and to try and maintain that decluttered mind? I know that's a big question now because there's a lot in that. But even just for our listeners to start, because I have a funny feeling we might be talking about this again later on in the year, Peadar, because there's a lot to talk about here.
Well, if you think about trying to declutter your mind, it's a little bit like decluttering your home. It's change. And if you're going to make change, it's important to be clear why you're doing it. So I would often say to people, what are the benefits to you doing this? And maybe what might be the disadvantages of doing nothing? So the benefits to decluttering your mind would be you will experience less stress and anxiety if that's something you experience. You might be more likely to be getting restful sleep. You could be boosting your mood by feeling more relaxed. And for some people, that actually could be really protective for their mental health. You might be more likely to make those decisions. So if you remind yourself of the benefits, you're starting to motivate yourself.
Yeah.
But then also thinking about it as I'm taking a small step. I'm taking one area of my life. So it could be just work. It could be something to do with your commute. It could be your relationship. It could be home life. It could be something you're doing there in the community. It could be something that's going on. And I'm going to take this one area to give myself some more wiggle room to be able to think. So you're creating a bit more space for yourself. And the kinds of things that we might do would be a periodic declutter inventory. So that's something every now and again, make it a bit of a habit.
So periodic, so that's every now and again do it?
Yeah, every now and again, maybe once a week, every couple of weeks. In my work, we do this little project at the end of the month where we kind of look at all of our stats and all of that stuff together. And That would be my time to do it. What has kind of gotten in the way of the things that I want? If there's things there that I haven't done, I mean, there could be factors I can't control, but if there's any factors I can control, I can look at that. But I can look at maybe I need to let go of that now. It might be things like getting some exercise. So exercise is a really good way to reset our nervous system. And in all of the studies that are being done, that shows how we can stop ourselves from slowing down what we call our executive functioning. So our brain's ability to remember, process memory, to make decisions, to see things from another person's perspective, to be kind to ourselves. Exercise and nature are the two things that really play a big role. So a little bit of exercise at a level that I'm comfortable with. If I need some medical advice around that, then so be it. But if not, maybe take up something that would give me joy and that would take me away from all that excessive thinking. We mentioned journaling, but valuing supportive relationships. That's really, really key. Sometimes we have these really wonderful people in our lives who could be our now grown up and mature brother and sister that we're newly getting along with, or it could be a best friend, and really saying, I want to value the time with this person. So when I hang out with them, or when we have a chance to go and get a coffee or a meal together, I'm not going to talk about all of my problems. I'm going to try to compartmentalize those a little bit so that we can actually go out and have a nice evening together, have a nice walk together. So I feel rejuvenated because we do need to recharge those batteries. Prioritising sleep. We all know, we hear it again and again, the importance of sleep for our brain health, for our appetite and our mood and all of the cycles that happen in our brain and body. And decluttering our tech can really help us because technology is such a huge part of our lives right now that we can really see how that when we do that, when we maybe remove some apps we don't want, maybe if we put some boundaries around our time on social media, or maybe get rid of a few that we don't really enjoy, we can create more space in our mind. And sharing family roles. Sometimes, we can take on roles in families where I'm always the one that does this or that, and sharing roles can give more variety to our week. It can make us feel less agitated and defensive. Why am I always left to do the bills, to bring out the recycling, to do this lift? So varying the roles a little bit. There are things that we can do on a more immediate basis.
Yeah, they're just simple things. One of the things I was going to ask you there was, at the very beginning you said to verbalize how you're feeling. And sometimes we don't verbalize to our colleagues or our family or our kids what we need. We expect them to look at us and know and read our minds. Now, I would be guilty of this, and then you make them feel bad and whatever. But it's just amazing when you tell teenage kids your expectation, or your partner what your expectation is. It's like they kind of look at you and go, oh, why didn't you tell me that before?
Absolutely. And so the explanation for so many silly little upsets in the workplace or in the home are, but I didn't know you wanted me to do that.
Yeah.
Or I didn't know what you were thinking, or I can't read minds. My own son, who is in college, just came back from his Erasmus year in the Netherlands. And he was telling me that he's a new him. They are as blunt as you could get, or they're just really frank and honest. You could look at it in different ways. But they literally will tell one another, please move your bicycle, or you're encroaching on my desk space. Yeah. Or whatever it is.
Oh, in Holland they do this.
They do this. This is very...
I thought you meant he just came home and he was telling you all this.
No, he's back from an Erasmus year out there doing some of his college studies there. And he just could not get over. First, he thought they were all rude. And then he realized, the whole country can't be rude. Yeah. They're just a lot more direct than we are culturally. He actually said he found it really, really good. You knew what people expected. So we can bring that more and more into relationships in work and at home. And if we teach it to our kids, and if we practice it in our more intimate relationships, we're actually going to have a lot less conflict.
And you can do it in a nice way. It's not being rude. I mean, you don't have to be abrupt with it, but just be honest. Yeah, there's so much smoke and mirrors in all types of relationships, also, really.
Well, we put so much emphasis on being polite, and then that kind of causes us, again, to delay making the decision to say what's on your mind.
Yeah, it's like going back to being a kid and wanting to be liked and to be a people pleaser and all that kind of stuff. It's really hard to shrug those things off. Yeah.
In parenting programs that we would run in psychology, we would say to the parents, give your child a direct command. Yeah. A direct, clear instruction. Don't tell them what it is they should not be doing. Tell them what it is that you would like them to be doing. And you could solve a lot of small problems that way and then not have to think about them, not be clouding up your mind with thinking of, I should have said, I should have put it this way.
Yeah. So does mind decluttering require reflection?
It does. It absolutely does. And just as we would reflect on what's the right car to buy, what's the right approach to how we're going to do anything, one of the things that can come up for people is if they declutter, whether they declutter their home or their workstation or their handbag or whatever they just decluttered. Oh, I could have needed that. So it's a little bit like that. Oh, I have made that decision and I'll have a regret. Or I've kind of put a boundary in this relationship and was I rude there or will I regret that in the past? There will be regrets. And that's a normal part of life.
Yeah.
And if we look at the cost benefit of that, if we make no decisions, we're going to carry all of this stuff around in our mind, cluttering up our mind, taking away the space to make decisions and the space to be present in work or home life. But if we make a decision, we will mostly make a good enough decision. We will sometimes have a regret. I gave away a coat years ago. And I saw somebody wearing a similar one and I thought, why did I give that away?
Yeah.
And I thought, no, maybe somebody else has that and they need it. So we have little regrets, but that's okay. We just have to live with having little regrets.
It's nice the way you said you make a good enough decision.
Good enough decision, yeah.
Yeah, that's really important, that it's okay to be good enough.
Good enough, yeah.
Yeah. For our listeners today, let's give them one thing to do, Peadar. Can we just start with just the first step? Not to be afraid, and what would be the first thing?
I would say the first thing to do is to do that verbalization, whether it's with another person, whether it's onto a piece of paper, whether it's into a recording device like your phone, and just get those words out there and say, this is what's been floating around my mind.
Yeah.
These are unmade decisions. This is stuff that's impeding me being able to think clearly. I'm holding on to something from the past, a bit of bitterness, an unmade decision. Maybe I should have phrased something a different way, and to get that down and then to think about, what do I want to do about this? So it's that kind of way of thinking of, I want to be action oriented. I want to do something about this and make one decision and see what that's like.
Yeah.
Just make one decision. Say, okay, I'm going to put a boundary in this relationship. I am going to let go of this thing that I've taken on and give myself a bit more space in my day, or I'm going to actually forget it. So it's a little bit like if you were going through your house. If you've done this and you've verbalized it or you've written down and you were going through your house, you would be thinking, what do I keep? What do I share? And what do I throw? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that. So what have I written down? That's my responsibility. I need to do that for my work or for my family, and I'm going to keep that and do the best I can. This I'm going to share. I might be talking to my other half. I might be talking to my colleague in work. We're going to share this. Or this I'm going to let go of. This project's never going to happen. Or I'm never going to have the perfect commute or whatever it is. And I'm going to do the best I can. And I'm going to let go of this.
Yeah.
So just like we would with a physical item.
That's really good. And Peadar, if people wanted to find more help with this, where's the best places for them to go to?
My go-to place is hse.ie and also yourmentalhealth.ie. So they're really two great places. So the HSE has done a great job of putting a lot of resources. From the HSE website, you can get loads of really helpful tips on some of the things we mentioned. Tips on better sleep, tips on money worries, tips on anxiety or depression, information on where to go for help in those areas. As well as that, there are really, really great resources like apps that are suggested. Sometimes we don't know where to go. I have one go-to person, and it's somebody called Joan Borisenko. She's a psychologist in the US, and she's into meditation and mindfulness. And I'll find her on YouTube. She's on the Hey Project, Hey-J-Y Project.
Okay.
And she's my go-to person. And I'll do a little meditation or mindfulness exercise with her, or even just a little tip of the day, and it kind of settles me. If I was starting off in this and I was looking for a resource, I'd be looking at the kinds of apps that the HSE suggested, like Mindshift, Headspace, or the Minding Your Wellbeing page on hse.ie is really, really good.
Yeah. Well, look, Peadar, I can't thank you enough for joining us on this episode of the HSE Talking Health and Wellbeing podcast. Your experience and practical advice about decluttering the mind is amazing. And I have a list of things that I need to do now, Peadar. I suppose one of the things that's really stuck with me is the whole thing of verbalising it and speaking into your phone. I'm going to be going around talking to my phone full time. It's hard to listen back to yourself, but I think that would be a really good way and a really fast way of being able to declutter my mind for sure. I think for our listeners to go to yourmentalhealth.ie, as Peadar said, for more support. And it's been a really, really, really great experience talking to you, Peadar, and I can't thank you enough. So for our listeners, if you found this an interesting podcast, please share with your colleagues, friends and family. And until next time, take care and stay well. This has been HSE Talking Health and Wellbeing.